Supreme Court Associate Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg has died at the age of 87. Just weeks before the start of the court's fall session and in the shadow of a presidential election now just 45 days away.
In the final days of her life, my grandmother and I spoke a lot about a lot of things. I pulled out my computer and she dictated the following sentence to me. She said, "My most fervent wish is that I will not be replaced until a new president is installed."
But President Trump wasted no time casting doubt on the statement.
It just sounds to me like it would be somebody else. I don't believe it could be. It could be, and it might not be too. It was just too convenient.
The principle involved here, Chuck, when an election's underway, as Joe Biden was talking in 1992, when an election's underway, the American people are about to weigh in on who's going to be the president. And that's the person, whoever that may be, who ought to be making this appointment.
But do you understand why many Americans view this as a double standard?
I can only repeat that we have an obligation under the Constitution, should we choose to take advantage of it, to fill the vacancy, and I assure you that's very likely to happen.
If there's a Republican president in 2016 and a vacancy occurs in the last year of the first term, you can say, Lindsey Graham said, let's let the next president, whoever it might be, make that nomination, and you could use my words against me, and you'd be absolutely right.
I will be leading the charge to make sure that President Trump's nominee has a hearing, goes to the floor of the United States Senate for a vote, because that is my job, and I believe I am doing what the people of South Carolina want me to do in this regard.
Given my experience working for Mr. Trump, I fear that if he loses the election in 2020, that there will never be a peaceful transition of power.
Get rid of the ballots, and we'll have a very peaceful. There won't be a transfer, frankly. There'll be a continuation.
Trump's comments today that he did not commit to a peaceful transfer of power if he loses the election.
What country are we in?
Good question, Joe. Heil Donald. I'm Barry Gordon.
And I'm James Farr.
And this is NewsRap, live at 5. Well, it's been another week, and what a week it has been. And we want to first of all welcome our wonderful friend and fan and oft-time commentator now and substitute for Andre Coleman, James Farr. James, welcome back.
Barry, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. It's great. Always great to have you here.
Glad to be here. You know, it's a tough filling in for Andre because he's a wealth of knowledge, and you know, I enjoy listening to him than I do myself.
Well, so are you. You're a wealth of knowledge. That's why you're back here, and particularly when we get into the local news. But right now, I want to start with the national news because I got to tell you guys. And by the way, if you want to get into this conversation, please do. It's go right to Facebook. And you can comment on Facebook, and we always love to hear from you. So please don't be shy and get into this. But this week for me, and you know that I can't stand Donald Trump, and I have called him names on this show, and I will probably continue to do that. But this week was the first week when I asked myself a question that I haven't asked in my 71 years of existence, almost 72.
And what question was that, Barry?
And that question is this democracy going to survive?
Why wouldn't it?
Why wouldn't it? Because I think right now we have someone in a position of power who doesn't care whether this democracy survives, and frankly would prefer that it not. I think he loves authoritarian leaders. I think that he wants to be one. And when I heard a president of the United States say, as inartful as it was, and we all know what he was talking about, but even to use the words, get rid of the ballots, and that if we get rid of the ballots, there doesn't have to be a transfer. There can be a continuation. I never thought that I'd hear that in my lifetime. George Washington, after his second term, and he was reluctant to do his second term, and after his second term, he walked away. And there was a tremendously contentious election between John Adams and Thomas Jefferson in 1796. Two cabinet members in Washington's cabinet, tremendous fight. And people wondered back then, is there going to be a peaceful transfer of power? Or is there going to be another revolution? Is there going to be a civil war? And there wasn't a civil war, and there was a peaceful transition of power. But when you cast doubt on the entire electoral process, which is what Trump is doing right now, and please don't mistake it for anything else. This isn't a joke. This isn't, he's just Trump. No, he is casting doubt on the fact that this is going to be a legitimate election. And when that happens, especially when it happens beforehand, before, most of the votes have been counted, we are in a very dangerous place. And I hope everyone understands that this is not business as usual. And we've got to get rid of this man, and we've got to get rid of him in the only way that we can. In a society like ours, we've got to vote him out of office, but we've got to get rid of him.
Well, Barry, I don't disagree with you in terms of getting rid of him or electing a new president. We agree there. But, I want to call it back to when you said the transition of power between George Washington and John Adams. And, from my lens, that was a white man's problem. That was not. Oh,
it sure was. It sure was.
And today, on November 4th, it's still a white man's problem.
That's right.
I will wake up on November 4th completely 100% unbothered by the results, because I can't turn the light switch off as showing up into society as a black man. But what I'm really shocked that no one has discussed is despicable and as divisive as Trump's remarks are, is why haven't we done away with the Electoral College? That's a bigger issue, know, and then, as you've pointed out on this show many times, that for the last however many cycles, the majority of the popular vote have swung in one direction. Why do we still have an Electoral College? To me, Trump will say just about anything. I'm not shocked. I'm not surprised. I mean, he has zingers and he'll say whatever he feels. He lies to such an extent that he can't remember his lies. We all know that. He showed up exactly as we believed he is. And now some people are shocked and appalled. I'm not. Why isn't the Electoral College done away with?
I couldn't agree more. And, it doesn't, first of all, it doesn't have to be done away with because each of the states that have control over the electors, and that's another story, but each of the states can decide that okay. Got an interruption here. Okay. Someone's making faces at me through the window.
It's Trump. See, I told you that was going to get
it's not Trump. Does
he have a Bible in his hand too?
No, it's a cute little gray-haired lady, and I don't know why she doesn't understand I'm on. Anyway.
Okay.
So the Electoral College was created at a time, and a little bit of political science here, but was created at a time when there were no political parties. And there weren't supposed to be political parties. It was supposed to be just a bunch of people. And they figured, well, the people are too stupid to really pick a candidate nationally. And they don't know all of the candidates. If you're not from Virginia, you don't know. If you're not from Massachusetts, you don't know John Adams. And if you're not from Virginia, you don't know Thomas Jefferson probably. And so what are you going to do? You're going to elect people you know to sit in a room with other people from all the other states, and they're going to decide who the president's going to be. That's how it was going to be. There was a real purpose for the Electoral College. It was an aristocratic purpose. It was an anti-democratic purpose. And certainly it did not involve those people who were at the time counted as 3/5 of a person. And that was not on anybody's radar.
And that's my next point, is that there was a purpose for slavery at that time.
Right. That's right.
And we eventually, as a country, eliminated it. And we don't have to go into the other issues that
we did, and we passed 3 amendments to eliminate it. We passed the 13th and 14th and 15th amendments. And guess what? White America found a way to circumvent that.
As they always do. White supremacy has a very crafty way of being white supremacy. And that typically starts with changing rules, changing laws, and finding gaps.
But there's also, go ahead.
I want to ask you a question, because I know we don't have much time left for national.
Go ahead.
And I don't want you to scare people so much, but I was watching last night.
Oh, no, I want to scare people. I want to scare people bigly. I want people to be scared, because this is not, I'm not being exaggerating. I'm not exaggerating.
I don't think that you are. But my question is, when we look at, I was watching last night, the secretary, I believe it was the state of Michigan, was saying they anticipate 3 million votes by mail to come in, and that they can't start counting those votes until 7 a.m. November 3rd. There's no way that they're going to be able to count 3 million votes by hand. So what does it look like going? So November 4th happens. No one's declared the winner.
Right.
Excuse me, November 3rd. What happens November 4th? And at what time do you anticipate we'll have some semblance of an idea of what the results are?
I don't know, because I think there are going to be a lot of lawsuits. I think that Trump is, first of all, he's the most litigious person on the planet. And so there are going to be a ton of lawsuits in any state that either, let's say it this way. Any state that looks like it's close on election night, right? And that could be almost every state.
Except for California. But
now but I mean, except for New York, California, sure. But, and Mississippi. But I mean, that could be any of those battleground states, right? Aren't going to be decided. What's going to happen is, first of all, people are acting like, well, they may call it for Biden or for Trump, and then that'll have to be reversed. Probably not, because if not enough votes are counted, then the networks will simply say too early to call.
Right.
And they won't call anything. And they'll say, we're going off the air because, we don't know what Florida's doing. We don't know what Michigan's doing. We don't know what Pennsylvania's doing. So that is probably what's going to happen. That's the most likely scenario. Then the next day, the lawsuits will start, and Trump and his allies will try to get as few of those mail-in ballots counted as possible, because they know, and I think they're right, is that most of those mail-in ballots, and by the way, mail-in ballots used to be always Republican ballots. When I ran for Congress, I was doing pretty darn well, and a lot of people thought I was going to win, and then I got swamped by the absentee vote, which was heavily Republican. So they used to be heavily Republican. Now, however, because of what's happened, they're going to be heavily Democratic, because his people have no fear, and they'll go to the polls and, without masks and vote.
Why don't you tell the audience before we go to local, because I know Jared has given us the cues.
Yeah, we got to go.
What happens if the results aren't settled come January inauguration day?
Well, they almost have to be settled before then, because if they're not settled by inauguration day, Nancy Pelosi is our next president of the United States.
Oh, there you go. You're happy now?
But that's not the likely scenario. The dangerous scenario is the one that's been written about in the Atlantic, which is that there are state legislatures right now that are run by Republicans that have seen that the Constitution does not dictate how electors to the Electoral College are chosen. And they could conceivably say, we don't have to listen to the popular vote. We're just going to choose our own electors. And they could choose Trump electors and ignore the popular vote entirely. That's the worst case scenario. I don't expect that to happen, but constitutionally it can. So I just want all the folks out there to understand we're in a constitutional crisis of a magnitude that we have not seen since the Civil War. And I hope everyone understands it. And there's only one thing you can do about it. Go vote.
Absolutely. We want to
go vote. That you can do.
Stuff?
Yeah, let's go to the local brief.
This is your local news brief for Friday, September 25th, 2020. As of September 24th, the Pasadena Public Health Department has reported a total of 2,550 cases and 122 COVID-19 deaths. The city averaged 8.1 new cases per day in the last week. 25 COVID patients are still in treatment at Huntington Hospital. Los Angeles County health officials say the current trends in new cases and hospitalizations are positive in the fight against the pandemic, but are still concerned about a possible post-Labor Day spike in cases. The county has met the necessary criteria to move into the next phase of California's economic reopening roadmap. However, the county must maintain the trend for 2 consecutive weeks before the state will move it out of the most restrictive purple level and into the less restrictive red tier. Fire crews continue to make significant advances in the battle against the bobcat fire in the Angeles National Forest. Officials report 50% of the blaze is contained. Now considered the second largest wildfire in Los Angeles County history, it has burned over 133,000 acres. Last week, flames threatened Mount Wilson, but weather conditions helped firefighters use controlled burns to save the observatory. Although the observatory was able to be saved, 52 other structures have been destroyed as a result of the fire. Along with residents living near the fire, many animals have been displaced. LA County Animal Control is providing shelter for companion animals at 3 separate locations and shelter for livestock at the Antelope Valley Fairgrounds. Monday's Pasadena City Council meeting covered a wide range of topics. To allow for the creation of Pasadena's 11-member Police Oversight Committee, an ordinance amending the municipal code was approved. Council authorized the spending of $80,000 on automated license plate readers for the Pasadena Police Department. In response to public comment expressing concerns about privacy and civil rights issues, manufacturer Vigilant Solutions must ensure that it will not use the data collected in any way that violates city or PPD guidelines, nor will Vigilant sell the data to any non-law enforcement agencies such as insurance companies. Council also authorized the purchase of full-scale mock-ups of anti-suicide barriers on the Colorado Street Bridge. Just over $160,000 were approved to contract Custom Design Ironworks, Inc. to fabricate and install the mock-ups on both ends of the bridge in November. Don't forget about the 2020 census. More information can be found at my2020census.gov.
So, James, talk to me. The fires. You wanted to talk about that.
Yeah, first of all, big shout out to my colleague Bradley Bermont over at the Pasadena Star-News, who went head first into covering the firefighters and the coverage up at Mount Wilson Observatory.
Yes.
Journalists get a lot of flack for the things that we do or don't do. And sometimes they also put their lives on the line to actually run into a fire. And so big shout out to him. But I'm a little naive, right? I'm not an outdoors guy. Like, whose responsibility is maintaining the national forest? Is that Newsom's problem, or does that fall somewhere else?
You mean raking the leaves?
Yes.
As Trump says, that we have to rake the leaves better.
Yes, please. Can we do better at that?
Most of the area where fires occur are federal lands.
Okay.
And so that would fall with the Forest Service, the U.S. Forest Service, and, I mean, it would. So, and it falls with FEMA, and it falls with our disaster agencies. He doesn't want to acknowledge that, but that's mostly what it is. But there's a big chunk, of course, that falls on the state and on every county, and, your fire departments in every county. And they're just, as you said, complete heroes. The work that they do, absolutely selfless. I haven't heard, there probably are stories out there, but, I haven't heard of stories where, they let a black person's house burn quicker than a white person's house. I haven't heard, if they are out there, and they might be, they're few and far between. So they just go out there every day, and they're incredible people who put their lives on the line. I can't imagine that kind of work and what that work entails. And I've met a lot of firemen and fire people, and they're just an incredible, selfless, courageous group of people. And
so is the Trump administration withholding resources, or is this something that could have been? Is there preventions to? I mean,
no, I don't think so. Yes, there's a prevention. It's going to take about 50 years, and it's called dealing with climate change. That's what the prevention is. This is being caused because the temperatures are overall on the earth getting higher and higher. I mean, Jared can tell you about that. He's a member of the Green Party, so he's studied up on that. But that's what is causing this: the severe weather, the hurricanes, the super cyclones. All of those are due to climate change, and unless we get that under control, we're just going to see more and more of this.
But you do understand the president says he doesn't believe in climate change, and
totally.
And then Vice President Pence says the Earth is only 5,000 years old. So are you right and they're wrong, or?
Yeah, I'm right.
I'm just trying to learn.
No, I'm right. I'll go with that. I'm going to go with I'm right on this.
Okay.
And Biden, and I don't know, about 95% of the scientific community. So that's where I'm going to lean.
When do people start listening to the science? I mean, that doesn't really work. Well, at least that's what the president wants us to believe.
Well, I mean, listening to the science is the only thing we can do. Not listening to the science is why we have 7 million COVID cases. In January, I think it was, the Trump's favorite, economic guru, Peter Navarro, warned about the pandemic, and he said we could have 2 to 3 million cases. Well, we've got 7 million.
All right. Well,
and we have 205,000 deaths, and a giant share of those are completely unnecessary. We got to start listening to the science. But this is definitely, I mean, I have heard so many reports and read so many reports that these fires really are due very directly to climate change, the frequency of them and the intensity of them. We're always going to have wildfires, but the frequency, the intensity, I mean, we had temperatures of 113 degrees? When the heck did we get 113 degrees in Los Angeles?
Right. With the exception of the gender reveal party that started the El Dorado fire.
Yeah,
Jared says we only got a couple more minutes. What else you want to cover locally?
Well, I want to talk a little bit about the election, of course, but I want to talk about it through the prism of the local election. But I want to talk about it through the prism of the police oversight issue.
Okay.
So basically, is there a division between Tornick and Gordo? And if so, what is it?
In terms of their view on police oversight?
Yeah.
Well, you had a unanimous vote by all of the council for police oversight as it is.
Right.
The difference is when Hampton proposed one proposal a few weeks ago, Gordo voted yes, Tornick did not vote for it. So if there is a difference,
and that was the toughest proposal, wasn't it?
That was the toughest proposal, but we ultimately got some of those elements ended up in this current proposal. But I tell you what, on October 11th, Tornick and Gordo are going to face off at Pasadena's great debate that I will be participating in. So we'll unpack a whole lot more there. But people should know that police oversight is not a preventative measure. It is post-event. So it is literally Monday morning quarterbacking, an incident that has happened days, weeks, months, or even sometime sooner. And so it has to be able to have a very broad scope of lens. I can't believe through those nearly 25, 30 hours of open testimony and discussion, not one council member thought to suggest that they have someone on that oversight body that has lived experience and or professional experience working and living with folks who live with a disability and the mental health population. The mental health population are far more likely to have contact with the police. And we need to have somebody in that room, on that committee that understands that experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, gosh, this went fast. This went very quickly. So, what can I say? It's always great to have you here, James.
Man, happy to be here.
So, folks, and watch James's show. When's your show on?
Conversation Live, new episode comes out this Sunday, 9 a.m. John Burton, the attorney representing Christopher Ballou, as well as one of the McLean family descendants. We typically air every Sunday, Thursday, and every Sunday. Facebook Live, Conversation Live, or Royal Channel.
All right. And stay tuned here for NewsRap. We'll be back with Andre, we think, next week. And so thank you so much for tuning in. This has been fun. James, thank you again. I'm Barry Gordon.
And I'm James Farr.
This is NewsRap. Live at 5.